Good afternoon. Yep. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay. I will introduce my co-speaker, Jackie. She's the champion of the Noda program in RCC Hospice. She has been a volunteer in RCC since 1999, so we're very blessed. Thank you. She's also the one who introduced Noda to RCC in year 2014. We have started Noda since July 2014 and is 2.5 years old.
Thanks, Juliet. And so this is Juliet Ng. She's the head of communications and community engagement, along with many other things. So as you can probably tell from the title, she wears many hats, and she's a very busy lady, and I often suspect that she has a few extra arms tucked away there, because there are many things that she's dealing with, including the move to a brand new hospice building.
Okay, so before I start our sharing today, I would like to take a little moment, okay, because Jackie is very dear to RCC, and I would like you all to join me to congratulate her. She's getting married in 2 weeks' time.
Sabo me. Thank you very much.
That's not planned, so she got sabot.
Thank you.
Okay, so now I'll go into our sharing proper. And what I'd like to share right at the beginning is the heart of the Noda program. And I'd like to share this description by one of our volunteers, and that is Guak Kwan. The way Guak Kwan described Noda is that all of us desire to connect with one another. The greatest gift you can give someone is your presence. So that is the very, very essence of Noda. No one dies alone. Okay, and what does it do? It is a volunteer program, basically providing friendship and presence of a companion to dying patients in RCC who are otherwise be alone. So in RCC, we have many patients that come through our doors that are actually alone. So we have 3 criteria of patients that we are deemed as alone. Number 1, they are really without any more family members left. They are also possibly those who are estranged for their family members, and also those whose family members are overseas and they're all alone in Singapore. So these are the patients that we help with Noda. So together with the clinical staff, so how we work with our volunteers is that we work together with the clinical staff. We actually provide the patients with companionship, and I'll share a bit more. Since we have started in July 2014, we have seen an increase in number of patients that are cared by Noda. In 2014, we cared for about 5 patients. This year, in 2016, we are really caring for 11 patients. So it's really, really real. And when we move to our new building next year, our capacity will increase, and we will see the demand for Noda program increasing along it. So I'm going to present the sense of the program, okay, while Jackie presents the sensibility of the program, okay? So from a volunteer management perspective, we have to set in guidelines and procedures so that this program is sustainable. And what we do is that for Noda, we start off, number 1, as a clinical team, identifying patients that are suitable, who will benefit from the Noda program. And only then do the patients or caregiver opt in for the program. So there is a opt-in to participate in the Noda program. And then that's only when Noda friendship is being mobilized. So what happened is that we are very high-tech, okay? We WhatsApp everybody. Okay, we have this particular Noda patient, and that's when the whole team are activated via WhatsApp. And in RCC, what is unique about Noda is that we don't just do vigil. We actually build our friendship with the patient first. So the patient could be with us for a few days, could be with us for a few months, okay? And once it's identified as a Noda patient, we build friendship with them. So the person, which we will do, okay, a vigil for this patient, is someone, the volunteers are known to the patient. It's not unknown to this patient. So that is the beauty of Noda in RCC Hospice. And when vigil is called is when our clinical team identify this patient as what we call dangerously ill. Then a vigil would be called, again, very high-tech, WhatsApp. Okay, WhatsApp. And what is beautiful about this bunch of volunteers to me is that they are so spontaneous. They don't run away. They will quickly opt in for all the different shifts of vigil. And they will all turn up and keep the patient company until he or she breathes his last. And that is how we end the process of patient rest in peace. Okay? So now I will share with you about this gentleman. I met this gentleman. His name is Mr. Long. Okay? I met him last year. And this is a party that we had for him one day before he died. Okay? Mr. Long, he is like some people that you might know. Okay? He used to work as a painter of the office buildings. Okay, so you can imagine somebody that you have walked past the street could be Mr. Long. So he started work at the age of 14 years old, very young, very quite similar, quite typical of people of that generation. Started work very young, and that was his job for many, many years. So he worked very hard, his hard labor, what we call blue collar, and he worked very hard. Then at the age of 40, he met his wife, which is fantastic, right? So he met his wife. He married an Indonesian lady who loves him very much. So because they were married at quite a matured age, so they don't have any kids. So they were very happy. That's very good. And what happened was that when they were married for over 10 plus years, at the age of 56, the wife had a massive stroke. Okay? You have seen survivors of stroke this morning, but Mr. Long's wife did not survive her stroke. She passed on very quickly. So at an elderly age, Mr. Long was all alone again. They don't have any kids, so he's all alone. So, but he carried on with with life. He stayed in a rental flat with his friend, and keep his expenses low. As he grew older, he couldn't work. He came to RCC last year, and he's alone. Okay, but he felt a lot of peace when he first came to RCC because he's a very quiet, simple man, and he liked all the simple things in life. And what he wanted, he told our staff and our volunteers, oh, I just want to have enough strength in my legs to go hawker center to eat my favorite food. Okay, food lah, huh? Singaporeans, all like that, sama. And that's what his wish was. Then, so what the volunteers do, he is a Noda patient. So what the volunteers often do, we pamper him with the food that he likes. And one of the dish that he really wanted was this longish carrot cake. I don't know how to, it's like a strip, not the fry one, the longish carrot cake, right? And the volunteers went to look for it high and low, and they found it. So we were able to throw this party for him, okay? Typical Singapore party, a lot of food. So he is surrounded by our Noda volunteers and our social workers. This is what happened. It happens in the RCC garden. And all the little food that he likes, we bought for him that day. And we are so privileged to have journeyed with him because he had a good time, a good makan time, one day before he passed on. Yeah?
So usually the Noda journey with our patients, it usually ends after the patient has passed away. But in the case of Mr. Lung, we knew that he didn't have anybody in Singapore. And we knew that this next part, after he passed away, he would be all alone. And there wouldn't be anyone to be at his cremation. So a few of our team, we just spontaneously decided, because we journeyed with him for several months, and he had grown very close to several of our volunteers, almost seeing them like his children, actually. And so just spontaneously, some of us really felt inside that he shouldn't be seen off with no one there. A charity organized the cremation, which was wonderful, but we just turned up at the crematorium to see him off. And we just felt it was right. It was sad, but it was right for us to be there. And if we hadn't have been there, then no one would have been at his cremation either to see him off. And actually it's interesting because it didn't even end there. So our journey with him continued because he wanted a sea burial. And so some of our team and the staff, we all came together and went out on the boat to scatter his ashes and really see him off so that he wasn't alone, even at the very end. Yeah.
Okay. And Mr. Long is someone that was very close to our heart, and it's important for us to ensure that this program that helps lonely people like Mr. Long is sustainable. So as a staff that is on volunteering management, it's important that we keep the program going in a strong manner. So there are things that if you are doing volunteering planning, things that we look out for is we look at recruitment and training, we look at policies and procedures. Though it sounds very structural and it's actually very critical in a volunteering program, because all these pillars will make this program sustainable and able to grow. So even like program, what we do in with the team, the Noda team, is that we go, we have many sessions whereby we do feedback from the team, and that's when we improve. We have feedback also from the clinical team. So for example, one of the things that came out from it is that with the feedback from the clinical team, we actually adjusted the criteria for the Noda patients. We expanded it because there's a growing need among the community. We have a patient that is very old. I think he's about 80. His closest kin is a 78-year-old lady who's a sister. And the sister struggles to come to RCC to visit him. And that's when we identified that this gentleman who don't have kids, don't have spouse, have an elderly sister, will be someone that we want to help because we don't want him to die alone. So all this happened because there's a continuous conversation with all the parties that is in this model of care, our volunteers and our clinical team. And it's important for any program to have all that in place so that we can continue to improve and benefit more people. And one important thing in Noda is closure and self-care. Without that, our volunteers will not be taken care of. So that is something that I'll let Jackie elaborate, but it's very critical to the program.
So the first thing that we decided when we were going to do Noda, so as Juliet said, these aspects are really critical to this, I think, to allow Noda to continue and to support each other in the running of Noda. So the first one is the training process. So the volunteers who do Noda at Assisi have already had 2 full days of training. They are already what we call carers. So they've already had experience volunteering in the hospice. So that's really important that they have some kind of grounding and foundation in that. It's interesting because we spoke to the founder of Noda, who's American. She actually came to our hospice. And she was really interesting. She said, because I was asking her, her training is only 90 minutes long. And I said, why is it so short? And she said, you know, people know how to do this. This is something that's in us. Taking care of each other at the end of life is something that we've always done as humans. And so people know innately what to do. So I was like, okay. But I think as much for me and feeling more secure for myself, I devised a 4-hour training. So our volunteers do a 4-hour training on top of the training that they've already done. And the training is based on what's called the 3 tenets. And it was devised by a Zen master actually called Bernie Glassman. So what these 3 tenets are, first of all, not knowing. So this is the idea that we can be with someone without an agenda and that we can be present to whatever arises. So our training focuses a lot on that. The second one is bearing witness. So this is the ability to listen deeply to another person and really try to walk in their shoes. It's also the ability to be able to hold the space for whatever arises. So the training, we also focus on that. And then if we can do that, if we can actually, as much as possible, try to not know, not have a predetermined outcome, and just really be with someone where they are, then what will happen is some kind of compassionate response will arise. And often that's not doing anything. We all want to do something. What can I do? How can I make it better? But actually a lot of Noda is just being with someone and accompanying them on their journey. Yeah, so this is what our training really focuses on. It sounds quite abstract, I know, but I just thought very briefly I'll give you a taste, because part of the not knowing is to become really present ourselves. So we've all had lunch, we're a bit sleepy, but I'll just give a 30-second introduction to being present, okay? So you up for it? So everyone, if you can sit up a little bit in your chair, put your feet flat on the floor. If I invite you to close your eyes, if you like, don't fall asleep. the zzz monster can come in. Okay, so see if you can sense into the ground underneath your feet, the support of that. Yeah, feel that. That stability of the floor under your feet, the seat underneath your bottom, that's always there for you. Yeah, if you ever feel worried or concerned, you can touch into that support. And then we have another friend that can always help us to be present. That's our breath. So right now, I just invite you to take a few long, slow breaths. Inhale, and then if you can really focus on the exhale, and just a couple like that. Exactly. Notice how the room's changed a little bit. So you can open your eyes again. So this is one of the things that we work on with our training, is just being able to be really present for another person, no matter what happens. So by applying these 3 tenets, then we find that we're more able to be with whatever arises without trying to fix it, because it's not about that really. So so with our training, we've actually run 4 of these trainings over the 2 years. We've trained almost 30 people for Noda. So another really crucial aspect is meetings and support, as Juliet said. We have regular meetings where we get together and we share, and we tap into the combined wisdom of our volunteers. Our volunteers themselves, it's not so much a matter of one person telling everybody else what to do. It's everybody has a lot of wisdom to share, and we grow and we learn from each other. So that's really, really important. So we have formal meetings. We also just get together sometimes to have tea and vent and debrief. That's also very important. Really acknowledging community, the community of each other. To me, that's the key to the success of Noda. So right now, I want to acknowledge my team. Could you all stand up? Yeah, they're very special people. And we always look out for each other. And that, if anyone wants to run a Noda program, that is a crucial part of it. You have to look after and love each other through it. And that was the other thing that we found, was that closure. Yeah, so when we changed... the other thing too I forgot to mention, as Juliet said, the WhatsApp. If you're ever going to have this kind of program, WhatsApp is the secret formula. It seems very superficial, but very instantly we can check in with each other and really reach out to each other. I mean, it's not the only way. You need to meet face to face as well. So the other aspect too is this closure and support, because this kind of work, it brings up a lot of things for us. And sometimes we journey with people for quite a few months, we grow very close, and then we need to say goodbye. And so we found that by changing Noda, in other parts of the world, Noda programs are only instigated at the very end. So often the people sitting with the dying person don't know that person. But we, on the other hand, have developed quite deep relationships with the person. So we've really had to work out how to support each other through this grieving process, because that's real. We say that we want to be like family for them. So of course, when you lose a family member, you grieve. And so we really have found the need to process and find closure. So we often create a space to grieve. So we'll create little rituals, actually, and some kind of meeting where we share, and we do a kind of secular ritual. A lot of us feel uncomfortable with ritual, like, ooh, but actually it's very powerful. Ritual allows us to access places that are beyond the mind and really get into the heart and what the heart needs. So one of the rituals we did was for this man called Mr. Low. He was a boatman. So he worked on the Singapore River. He was a very feisty guy. And after he passed away, we did quite a long vigil for him, quite a few days. And so we all came together to remember him. And that remembering is also an important part of healing. By sharing and telling, accessing those parts of ourselves, we can, those feelings can move through and they're not so stuck in us. But anyway, with Mr. Low, he was a boatman, so I made this boat, not very good, out of paper. And then we all wrote a wish for him, and we put it in the boat. Then I went down to the Singapore River, and I put it out. Probably illegal. But that was something that we felt was a gesture for him, to send him on his way. So that's another really important aspect. Yeah. So, okay. So this another aspect of this closure too is self-care. It's part of self-care. A few people have mentioned this. Self-care is really paramount in the work that all of us do. We can't continue unless we keep checking in with ourselves and seeing how we are emotionally and nourishing ourselves to keep going. So for our volunteers, they all have different ways of looking after themselves. So some people will go for walks, some people will sing, some people will pray, some people will read. It's different. Some people will spend time with their kids. But it's interesting, a few of our volunteers really love to journal. It's an aspect, it's a way for them to really write out, what they've been going through. And so one of our volunteers, Jeanette, she's very kindly agreed to let me read some of her writing. This is something she just did spontaneously, and I also combined something she shared with me when we were speaking. So if you don't mind, I'll just read what she wrote. On June the 13th, 2013, at 9:57 a.m., for a split second, eyes opened, a gentle smile, a last breath, and my mum was gone. She had been comatose with pneumonia in a hospital for 2 weeks, but before that she'd been paralyzed on her right side for 8.5 years after a stroke. All those years it had been very hard for her, but what I alone witnessed that morning was something beautiful. Room quiet, eyes open, the gentle smile, the last ah. Months passed, and this morning kept coming back to me. I wanted to do something, so I started volunteering at Assisi Hospice and later became a Noda volunteer. With Noda, we serve all kinds of patients, and earlier this year we accompanied Mr. B, a Malay gentleman. I hadn't had much chance to get to know him as he had been recently admitted. So when it was my shift to vigil with him, I felt a little unsure as I approached him. I came closer and heard what I thought was moaning, and this touched my heart. I summoned up my Malay and I said, "Jangan takut, don't be scared. I'll sit with you. I'll be here with you." Though maybe I was also saying this to myself. I sat quietly with him and took his hand, and the moaning became softer and quieter. As I sat being present with him, I realized that he wasn't moaning. He was chanting his Quran. And even though I'm a Catholic, it was a special moment when we were both soothed and comforted in that time together. This is the power of Noda, to create connections between all of us, no matter how different we seem. It's been more than 2 years that I've been part of the Noda team, and I have learnt that death should not be fearful. It's part of our being. Once we accept this, it's easier to let go when the time comes. But it helps if there is someone by your side to wish you well, and even just say a simple goodbye. I remember one day, while having coffee with my brother and talking about Noda, he suddenly said, "You know, you are the goodbye girl." I like that. I am the goodbye girl, the one that sees someone off on their journey to another place. Thank you so much, Jeanette, for allowing me to share that. She's very shy, but she's here. But I promised I wouldn't point her out, so I won't. Yeah. So
that is what our volunteers go through. So many of times they will tell me they have received so much being a Noda volunteer. What I would like to share is what our patients have received from Noda. So thanks to the volunteers. Jenny is our patient, and as shared by her nephew, Jenny has received much care and love during her last days. And there's another gentleman, his name is Tan Juliet. He is 87 years old when he came to RCC in August 2015. He is the eldest of 4 kids. So he had 3 other siblings, 3 younger sisters. And he actually, they have actually all passed on. And when he came to RCC, so he was actually all alone. He was single, so he didn't have any spouse or any kid. And the closest kin was a 55-year-old niece, the daughter of the younger sister. So Mr. Tan was a Noda patient, and he was cared by the Noda volunteers, and they kept quite a long vigil. It was over National Day. And what the niece shared with us was that the volunteers comforted the uncle and offered warmth to the uncle. So that is what Noda gave to our patients. So I thank all the volunteers for doing that. I will end by a phrase by a quote. Okay. No one should die alone. Each human should die with the sight of a loving face. So said Mother Teresa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Juliet and Jackie. And we'll now open the time for any questions. Anyone in the audience? If you have any questions for either Juliet or Jackie? No? They will be around. If you'd like to approach them, after that as well, please feel free to do so. All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Jackie. And thank you, Juliet, for sharing with us about Noda. Thank you.